Hello and welcome. My name is Barkha Dutt. You're watching the Mojo story. Our focus continues on the COVID crisis. And finally, there might be what doctors are calling a breakthrough moment for India. One, by the way, that could have come a lot sooner had approvals been given from the government a lot sooner. We are talking about what's being called an antibody cocktail or what's called monoclonal antibodies. It has been administered on the first patient in Medanta. Let's bring you those pictures now. And you can see that it was administered on an 84-year-old man, not a young man, a geriatric man really, who was not very critically ill, but then was administered this antibody cocktail and was sent home where he will be monitored by the Medanta Hospital, where he was given the first dose of this monoclonal antibody cocktail. A bit expensive, cost close to 60,000 rupees per dose, but that's many actually injections that people are hunting for right now. And the fact is that this is the same sort of cocktail that was also given to Donald Trump when he was president. And the belief is that if the approvals for this had come a lot sooner, then we could have actually seen more lives being saved. But what is it exactly? And, will this dispel and do away with some of the bad science moments? We've seen a lot of antibiotics, a lot of medicines like ivermectin that continue to be administered despite the producers of ivermectin, Merck, saying that they don't actually work for COVID. Arvinder, let me just start with you because, this happened at Medanta. We saw the first patient get it. We saw the patient going home.
So this gentleman, as you saw, is 84 years old. He has mild COVID disease. And since we had the approval and since we had the monoclonal antibodies, we administered them to him. Then he was observed for a day and then he was discharged. And it's too soon to say if he's going to be absolutely well faster than otherwise. But so far, he's doing well.
But tell us a little bit about why he qualified over, let's say, somebody else to be given this.
So, Barkha, when these trials were held, and there are, I believe, about 20,000 patients on whom these trials have been held all across the world, they have been basically held on patients who are older than 65, or if they're older than 55, then they should have a comorbidity, which makes them high risk. So these are really this is an emergency drug for someone who's high risk, who's expected to have severe disease, may have a higher chance of dying if they contracted COVID compared to other people. And that's the specific group, the high risk group that we are targeting to give these antibodies so that severe disease and death can be averted. In the trials that we have read about that came out, there was a 70% decline in the chances of severe COVID or death if they received these antibodies in the first week.
Priya, if I were to ask you how much of a game changer this is medically, now for India, this has just happened, but the US has always had access to it. Like Arvinder mentioned, Trump was administered these.
Arvinder was saying they're about 70% effective at reducing hospitalization and death. When we started using these agents in late December, and even for us, supply was very limited initially, and there was also logistic problems. So for the medication to work, it needs to be administered ideally within the first 7 days of symptoms, and getting to the patients, getting them tested, getting the test results back, identifying them as high risk, and administering the drug, even here in such a resource rich region, was very difficult. Over the course of the last few months, we've learned how to streamline it, get patients in quickly, and get it administered. The other problem with these medications was initially it was a 2-hour infusion, and you were doing it in outpatients who are now in the most highly infectious phase of the disease. So keeping everybody safe when you were bringing them into a clinic or an infusion center was a problem. And we've learned from our experience, and now it's become a fairly slick process. The infusion time has been cut down to 30 minutes, which also helps. And we're able to do it safely. Just at my institution, we've given about 4,500 doses of these medications over the last 4 months. And we've definitely seen a big reduction in the highest risk patients' morbidity and mortality. They just don't come in with severe disease anymore.
If you follow Asha Jadeja Motwani on Twitter, it will reveal something very interesting. Well before this moment that we had of actually being able to administer this gentleman at Medanta, I would see Asha everyday tweets saying Roche is ready to send these antibodies, and she would keep saying, if given within the first 72 hours, this will save countless lives. Indian Babus rejected this last year. This is accurate. These were rejected in the December of 2020 when they first came for approvals. It will count as one of the many sort of bureaucratic mistakes that we made, like we have with Pfizer, where, by the way, the rules have changed today. Local trials have been dispensed with, and you can see all of Asha's tweets there. And one of the points that she kept making was that she believed that the wealthy of India, the politicians of India, had some sort of access to these antibodies, while ordinary Indians were not getting access to them at all. So I just want to highlight that this moment that we have here, we could have had this moment in the December of 2020 or even earlier. December 2020 were when these were rejected. So these are Asha's tweets, and I want to go to Asha and talk a little bit about her struggle, because she was working in the background with Roche to get these to India, and she still had to struggle to get approval. So Asha, go ahead. Tell us your story.
Yes, well, I mean, for me, we're just sitting here in the US, right, fully aware that people have been saved, lives have been saved here for months now. And in fact, monoclonal antibody was made famous because of Trump. So this is not some sort of an obscure treatment. And so for us, it was just like shocking that this had been rejected in India in December of 2020. And I was, I tried calling some people and asking if they knew why this was rejected. And they had no answers. Actually, nobody in Niti Aayog or in the government offices anywhere had any answers as to why this was rejected. And then I discovered that some people were getting it through the diplomatic pouch. Again, I have no idea what it is, but some folks mentioned to me out of Delhi that yes, some people did get it in through the diplomatic pouch, and their lives were saved. And so I started, this, as you can imagine, this was absolutely a harrowing moment for many of us, because we were like, how is it that some people are getting it? This has officially been rejected in December. Can Roche send this anyway? How do we send? Can we just ship it to somebody? I actually called somebody in Karnataka, and the Karnataka state government said, we will take it. Just let us know how. And I was actually thrilled that they were willing to bypass Delhi government and take it. Ultimately, we went back and forth with, some people at somebody called Dr. Paul, and then somebody in, I think, Dr. Raghavan, and multiple agencies. And I think there was also, fortunately, we ran into somebody called Dr. Kang, Gagandeep Kang, who is a firecracker. By the way, I'm so grateful we ran into her, because she actually, I think she was really quite helpful in getting all this approved. Finally, it's done, and it has saved the life of this one gentleman. So thank God. Now the first 100,000 doses are sent for free by Roche. I'm not sure what the next step is, but Indian government should not even think of anything like approval and so on. Just get it done. Let people live, please. This should be, especially those who want to, pay for it, at least let them have it,
How frustrating was it for you that you had Roche willing to send 100,000 doses free to India, and you couldn't get the government's bureaucrats or whoever, politicians, to actually sign off on this?
You can imagine, Barkha, we were pulling our hair out, okay? Yeah. Because we knew that every hour that was delayed was lives lost. And so I, to be honest, we were just, either collapsing here, just sort of like, how can this not be taken taken seriously? Thankfully, it wasn't just, some of us from the US. There were also one or two critical people that we ran into in India who, and I won't mention the name of the company, but the startup, folks. And it was incredible how much, back and forth they did with relatives, friends, phone calls to Delhi, and said, this has to be done.
So a new weapon that one could have had much earlier. Mufi, do you want to add your thoughts to that? Because I think Asha made the very important point, and nobody really picked that up, that monoclonal antibodies were available as a therapy for many months, and that there's a sense that the wealthy of India had access to it, the powerful had access to it, but the ordinary Indian didn't. And now, yes, there's a new weapon in the armory, but it could have existed much earlier. As somebody who actually ran a jumbo facility in Mumbai, do you think that things would have been very different for you because in that jumbo facility, not all patients needed ICU. A lot of them were mild to moderate. And had you had this treatment, wouldn't your life, Mufi Lakrawala, have been much, much simpler?
But what I want to say is that these monoclonal antibodies are great add-on to our fight against corona. But there are two things to it, all right? A, I do believe it has to be given in the first 72 hours. The paper from Regeneron, whatever I've read, it has to be given in the first 72 hours. How many Indians are we picking up in the first 72 hours? Do they even come to the hospital? The good thing about these antibodies is you don't have to be hospitalized to be given them. You can be taken, they can be taken, like Asha said, on an OPD basis. You can give it either over 2-hour infusion or even half an hour infusion. The next thing is the cost. Of course, only 60,000 odd bucks. I think they've dropped the cost for India, and we've got maybe 100,000 odd bucks for free. The question is, with this pandemic moving to the rural India and the villages, are people even going to be aware that they can be given this life-saving drug at the right time? Because if it's not given in the first 72 hours, I think it is not going to be as useful. Even their trials in the US have shown that it has to be given in the first 72 hours for it to be effective.
Harsh, how much of a game changer moment is this really, or are we overstating it?
It is going to be a game changer, no doubt. But as has been very rightly said by Dr. Lakrawala, the amount that is available globally is still limited. And how much of it we'll be able to get into the country is a moot point. And that's where, if we can actually indigenously manufacture under license from Roche, that'll be very good.
I had a question. If Roche has donated 100,000 doses to India, why are we charging 60,000 for these doses? I was just curious. Who's getting that money?
Extremely important question. Look, once we shipped it out from here, from Washington, D.C. into Delhi, we've lost track of who is being given what and for how much. It must be given for free right now. If anybody is charging 60,000, I think that's criminal. So please look into that, Barkha, and whoever is, please look into it. But Roche is partnered with Cipla in India. So Cipla might be able to manufacture it. I'm not sure if they have that kind of an agreement or what's the partnership between Roche and Cipla, but something to explore for you guys. I think as far as Pfizer and all these companies, these vaccines go, we have all taken them. My parents who are 85 and 87, they've taken them, come out skipping and jumping, okay? So there is no question that the Indians, by lakhs and millions, are probably taking it outside the US. So where is this whole question of approval and doing this test studies on Indians? We are all taking it here. So please use this data and start approving these things if they can save lives in India right now. I think every hour saved is a life saved or multiple lives saved.
So let me clarify a little on this. So first of all, it's not easy to set up the manufacturing capacity and facilities straight away. These are monoclonal antibodies, which are from basically like a single cell line. Okay, it's called like a clonal development part of the story, and they have one clone from which the entire antibody stock is developed. So it's not going to be easy to manufacture this in the short term. Roche has an arrangement with Cipla whereby Roche manufactures it, ship it to India, and Cipla markets it for them. I'm sure the free doses that have come across will be given away free. 60,000 is the cost for paid doses, and both have come, paid as well as free doses. So I don't think there should be any confusion on that.
Can we now take this as a test example, as an illustration of the fact that there are many things that could have moved faster that didn't, that even when people wanted to help, that help couldn't be given, that when there's been access to actually good science, we haven't taken it, and we've been dealing with what some call bad science instead.
So first of all, Barkha, I have to say that kudos to the medical community in India. I mean, the doctors, the NGOs, citizen groups, the peer-to-peer sort of civil society groups, hats off that people have pulled off level of support for each other and for the community at levels that I don't think we could ever pull it off in the West. So I must say that congrats to the whole medical establishment in India about just incredible, just support for the whole system there. the frustration that I've been having has been strictly with the bureaucracy. It has nothing to do with politicians either. I don't think they understand anything. Ask them to say the word monoclonal antibody. I'm not sure most will be able to say it. But the bureaucracy, whose job it is to be to be really fast tracking certain things in the face of such massive number of deaths, is something that needs to change. And I just wish that I could understand at least, or that we even had somebody on your show, Barkha, sooner or later, who can actually speak about this and say that, look, this is our process. Here is where we have made mistakes in the past, and here is where we can streamline or fast track things that have worked for people outside the US, and where there is enough data that we can move forward to save a few lives, and really be able to understand also the sort of the risk reward scenarios, right? So, for example, in the case of the one of the, I think it was AstraZeneca in Europe, if out of 65 million people, if 10 million got blood clotting and died, actually, to be honest, that's something that has to be seen in that context. So it cannot be seen strictly as saying, oh, some people got blood clotting. If 65 million versus 10 is a different risk reward scenario that people must know about, must speak about.
WHO Chief Scientist Dr. Soumya Swaminathan said to me very categorically that ivermectin must be stopped, and that Merck, which produces it, has issued a statement saying don't use it. There have been debates around many of the treatments. I think we've all agreed now on plasma therapy, but there have been debates on how we are using steroids. Mufi's been on a couple of those conversations. There have been debates on remdesivir. There have been debates on tocilizumab. And I just want to, and I know Priya spent a lot of time listing out things she says do not work.
I think it's like 6 rupees in any medical store. They're over the counter. You can walk in and get them. So in a panic, you do have patients taking it, very randomly without prescription. So I would love to request, Barkha, that you and all of you speak to people who are in the approval business and find out what's stalling things, because it's critical right now that things that have worked elsewhere and where data is robust and available, that we really approve things in hours, not days, in hours.
Yeah. Approve things in hours. I wait for that, India, to take place. Even a crisis hasn't brought us yet to that point. But yes, today is a day when the government has finally dropped the local trials demand for Pfizer. We're hoping it should not have taken these many months, but we're hoping that something moves. We leave it there. Thank you so much to Harsh, to Priya, to Asha, to Arvinder, and to Mufi, who we just lost there, but thankfully at the end of the program. And to our audience, we're in Delhi today after 12 days in rural India, and we'll be in South India next. We will continue to bring you reports from the ground, not from inside the studio, as we see what's happening outside the big cities to the COVID crisis. It's very important to tell that story as well. Thank you for watching, and goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.